Hello and welcome to Street Beat. I'm your host, Rob Stone, and today we'll be highlighting Michigan-based authors who have written books that have inspired and touched the lives of others. Our first guest was a longtime sports reporter for the Detroit Red Wings. She's here to discuss her book, Power Play, which talks about her experiences in the locker room. Welcome, Cynthia Lambert, to Street Beat. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you.
So here's the book right here, Power Play, and we were talking a little bit before we came on. What years were you a reporter for the Red Wings?
Well, I worked for the Detroit News starting in 1985, and I started coverage of the Wings in 1986 as the full-time backup beat writer, and then in the 87-88 season I took over the beat, and I covered them through the end of the 1998 season, which was their second Stanley Cup.
Right. It's a good time to be there, huh?
It was a great time to be there. I saw them from the worst to the best.
And so, without kind of giving too much away about the book, because we want to get it and we want to read it.
Yes.
Could you give us a little brief synopsis of what it's about?
The book is, I guess you would call it a memoir. It's about how I started getting interested in sports as a little girl, and how that interest grew, and how I ended up pursuing a career in journalism, and why I wanted to be a hockey writer, and why I was drawn to that, and then what it was like for me, starting at the age actually of 22, working for a weekly newspaper, covering the Wings or doing periodic reporting on the Wings, and the task of going in the locker room as a 22-year-old woman and facing what was not always an easy thing, and just following my career then and my interactions with players and situations that happened. And more than anything, although it's a book for hockey fans or sports fans, it's also a book for women and young, probably teen to older girls and boys, mm-hmm. who maybe want to pursue a career of their own that maybe is a little unorthodox, but more than anything, hopefully you'll get a few laughs out of the book. And
I did read on the back, you were saying when you first walked in there, I'm sure there was, some words and some things said that, like, hey, what's going on? What is this girl doing in the locker room, right? I mean, challenging at first, I can imagine, but did things get a lot easier? Did players kind of get to know you pretty well throughout the process?
Yes, it was. I think the discomfort mainly in the beginning was my own, because it's not a natural environment to be in for a man or a woman to walk into anyone else's locker room with, 25 players in various forms of coming down from the game and getting ready to leave the locker room. But there was one incident early on that was not pleasant, and there was another incident about a year later that was very comical, involving Sean Burr as an 18-year-old recent draft pick. But it did get easier, and I did get to know the players. Obviously, you get to know them when you're there every day. And hopefully what I was able to generate was a healthy respect that for me, for the players, and the players to me. And I think that's why it worked.
And why do you think now? Why now for the book and not, when you were really in the mix?
When I was in the mix, I think I was in too deep to even get perspective on what this all meant. And as I was writing the book, I was jotting down just memories, random memories, and putting them in some kind of order. And it struck me now at my age and my experience with 2 careers since then, I was 22 years old doing that, and I was 23 when I started at the paper, and it gave me definitely a better perspective of what those experiences were like, and I was able to attach some form of, this is what I learned from them, or isn't this funny, even though at the time it may have been a little traumatic.
Mm-hmm. What about one of your most maybe enjoyable memories, or something that really pops out during the time that you were there?
Oh gosh, there were so many. I think one of my absolute favorites, though, was being in the locker room after the Wings won the Stanley Cup in 1997. And one player in particular, watching Vladimir Konstantinov finally breaking out of his reserved shell and running around screaming, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he's wet from sweat and champagne, and he's shaking my shoulders, and he's just screaming, he shoots, he scores, he shoots, he scores. He was so out of his mind excited, and it was just so great, and I'm so grateful that I was able to be there to capture that moment, hopefully in print, but also in my own memory bank.
So it's a fantastic book for Red Wings fans, like you said, hockey fans, and also, you know, I know several young women that are actually interning and looking to get into the same types of things. And so what type of advice would you give to maybe a woman who's trying to get into the sports world? Maybe actually someone that we work with is working on being a sideline reporter. So,
oh, that's great.
You know, you have a lot of challenges that you can speak from that you overcame and become very successful at it. So.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You said I have challenges, and as I said, I think the major challenge was my own nervousness about doing this job and interacting with these star athletes, and that took a while for me to learn. But the only advice I can give is be yourself. Don't try to pretend to be anyone else. Don't try to take on some sort of tough persona if that's not in your personality.
Right.
I mean, you've got to be authentic. I mean, the whole point of reporting is to extract the truth from the situation. And if you're not being truthful with who you are, it's never going to work.
Well, thank you so much for all of your time. We're looking forward to checking out the book.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
And to read more, you can find Cindy's book at balboapress.com, amazon.com, or barnesandnoble.com. Up next, we'll hear from a Detroit-based author that emphasizes living with an open heart. Street Beat will be right back.